I'd now like to introduce our speaker, Christine Holmes. Christine is going to talk to us about being High Sheriff for a year. The position of High Sheriff is the second oldest secular office in the country. She will endeavour to explain its history and how she worked to maintain its status and dignity whilst making it more relevant to the 21st century. We give a warm welcome to Christine.
A very good morning. Thank you for asking me to speak to you today about a year as High Sheriff. I'm going to tell you a little of the history, the nomination process, the Under-Sheriff and uniform, and in particular my uniform. I will tell you about my year in office and seek to show how I went about achieving my aim to celebrate Shropshire and its communities. The office of High Sheriff is the oldest secular office in the United Kingdom after the Crown and dates from Saxon times. The exact date of origin is unknown, but the office has certainly existed for over 1,000 years since the shires were formed. As the Wessex Saxons took over Mercia in the 10th century, the new lands were divided on an honorary basis. The current Under-Sheriff, Madeline Butcher, practiced as a solicitor in Shropshire before retirement. And the Under-Sheriff provides a degree of continuity that is invaluable to a High Sheriff, who has only a single year in which to learn and perform the role. This continuity is of particular importance where annual or recurrent events are concerned. For example, the annual legal service that I will tell you about later. High Sheriffs hold the rare privilege to use the royal crown to symbolise their ancient office. This permission has been in place since 1991, when the Queen issued her royal licence and authority for the Shrewsbury Association of England and Wales to incorporate the royal crown in its arms and badge. The crown has an ermine border around its base to symbolise the judiciary. The swords are in saltire, crossed in an X shape, with the blunt sword that represents mercy and the sharp sword, justice. The Tudor rose symbolise England and the crossed leeks, Wales. The wreath of gold oak leaves is representative of the national tree of England. It is usual for a High Sheriff to appoint a chaplain to support them during their year in office. This is not essential, and as the Shrewsbury has become more diverse, some High Sheriffs do not make an appointment. I asked the rector of the church in whose parish I reside to be my chaplain, and he accepted. This is my chaplain, Reverend Andrew Knight, who is rector of St Giles, Shrewsbury, with St Earta's Action. The ceremonial uniform worn by High Sheriffs is called court dress. It has remained essentially unchanged since the 17th century and consists of a black or dark blue velvet coat with steel-cut buttons, breeches, shoes with steel-cut buckles, a sword and a cocked hat. A lace jabot is worn around the neck, and some High Sheriffs wear their military uniform instead of court dress. Female High Sheriffs generally adapt the style of traditional court dress to suit their needs. Tradition is that Lady High Sheriffs include one or more ostrich feathers in their hat. Here are a selection of High Sheriff uniforms. Of the two men, one is in court dress and one is in military uniform. It is permissible for one who is It is permissible for one who is entitled to wear it by virtue of a military background. The ladies show a wide variety of styles, but note the steel-cut buttons, hat, and ostrich feathers. My uniform was the first time I had had anything made for me, and I was delighted to find Frances Haig, who has an establishment in Shrewsbury. She was extremely helpful with advising on the design, and subsequently she made the outfit for me. Frances, would you like to get up and take a bow? Just getting the right material and accessories was a real challenge. The steel-cut buttons for the jacket are now quite rare, not having been manufactured since the mid-1920s, although there are some modern replicas available. It took many months of searching to find the buttons, which were eventually sourced from an online button specialist. The velvet was also a problem. I had decided that I wanted a deep red, maroon colour, and Frances commented that most Lady High Sheriff uniforms were of what she called railway engine colours. She meant the colour of old steam engines, deep navy blue, deep green, or dark red. My husband suggested that we use crimson lake, once a familiar sight on steam engines in our county, and so it came to pass. The velvet supplier of choice for High Sheriffs is Joel & Sons Fabrics, situated just off Edgware Road in London. Now, the outside does not give great promise. A 60s building situated on a tatty road that has regular street markets. However, once inside, it is a treasure trove, and the staff know their fabrics backwards. I was advised that only cotton velvet would do. Silk velvet would mark too easily and is no good in the rain. Nylon would be too hot and sticky. So the choice was made and the fabric obtained for Frances to work her magic. I don't have any antique lace handed down from family, and a search of second-hand shops proved fruitless. I already knew a Shrewsbury lacemakers group who meets every month on a Saturday in Bayston Hill. Often, the attendance is 50 to 60 people who work on many different lace types and designs. Dare I ask them to make lace for my cuffs and jabot so that everything in my outfit was made in Shropshire? A tentative email was immediately returned with, "Can we meet? And yes, we would very much like to provide some lace." Are there any lace makers in the audience today? That's a shame. There are 2 lace patterns designed especially for me, and many of the lace makers helped in the making. The lace was presented to me in a beautiful silk box with an inscription on the lid, and it is my intention to hand this on to the next Lady High Sheriff. The generosity, the exquisite workmanship and humour of the group will remain with me always. The sourcing of the ostrich feathers also proved an adventure. I discovered, believe it or not, an ostrich feather company located in Stamford, Lincolnshire. Think small, old, industrial unit filled with feathers of all types for the theatre industry. The sort of place where you would go for your Strictly Come Dancing accessories. Beautifully coloured feather stoles, fans and masks, mostly made out of ostrich feathers because they are the best for taking up the colour and shaping. A purchase was made at a very reasonable cost, and a number of different sizes and colour variations from white to cream. Now to the hat. This proved a lot more difficult. The hat had to be really robust, capable of withstanding rain, wind, and people sitting on it. Walking out of town one day, I called in a pre-loved shop. No, there was nothing on view, and as I was walking out, the owner asked if she could help. I showed her a swatch of the fabric, and the response was, "Hold on a tick, I might have something upstairs." She returned promptly with a creation. "Take this with you," she said, "and if it's the right one, call in and pay, or bring the hat back." Now that's what I call service. There's the hat. The feisty felters of Shropshire made me a felt hat for cold days, and it has become a favourite of mine in retirement. This hat was shown on a previous slide. Lady High Sheriffs do not carry their sword, but have it carried for them in ceremonial duties. Many borrow a sword, and I don't have any swashbuckling family members to borrow a sword from, but I do have a friend who casually said that he knew a Mr. Pooley and would be very happy to make an introduction should I want a sword. Did I want a sword? Not really, but my friend advised me that a visit to Mr. Pooley's workshops in Shoreham was historically very interesting and worthwhile. So a time and date was arranged. I was assured that there would be no pressure to buy, and we arrived to be greeted by Mr. Pooley himself. I had the most informative and fun time imaginable amongst a host of swords. I fell in love with and bought a ceremonial sword made around 1920 by Wilkinson Sword. This is at Shoreham Airport with Robert Pooley, displaying my new sword, and he agreed for it to be engraved with my personal marks once I had decided what I wanted, and the sword was returned several months later, and the result can be seen on display at the front. What I wanted to achieve in my year was to celebrate communities of all different types in Shropshire. And I started by inviting the community in which I lived, worked, and brought my children up to make my declaration at the Crown Court. In order to take office, a High Sheriff has to make a declaration laid down in the Sheriffs Act of 1887, and for it to be witnessed either by a Justice of the Peace or a High Court judge. I was fortunate enough to persuade High Court Judge Mr. Justice Haddon Cave to hear my declaration. I sought to be an accessible High Sheriff to all in the county, irrespective of race, colour or creed. To find other communities, I sought out many different voluntary and statutory organisations working in communities all over Shropshire. What I found is impossible to describe with enough empathy. To be in a position to thank them and tell them how important they were in our communities was a privilege. Celebrations to be remembered are the installation of the Bishop of Lichfield, the Queen's 90th birthday parties, RAF Cosford Air Show, a helicopter ride over Shropshire from RAF Shawbury, and carol services at Shrewsbury Cattle Market and Hereford Cathedral. What an unforgettable year I had. It is such a privilege to be High Sheriff. So many doors that are normally closed become open, and the welcomes received wherever I went were tremendous. I am a magistrate, and so I am familiar with the criminal justice system. In my year, I visited courts, prisons, probation, witness and victim services, and had Crown Court judges and district judges. I'm going to have a piece of this drink, sorry. And district judges round for tea. But this was not the focus of my journey of discovery. I also spent time with the police service. There were many visits to headquarters at Hindley Hall, and the chief constables were most welcoming and facilitated for me a greater depth of understanding of how the modern police force works. I visited both main stations in Shropshire at Shrewsbury and Telford to see local initiatives to keep people safe and to reduce recidivism. And I had fun with the police cadets. Excuse me. Perhaps unusually for a lady High Sheriff, I hold a full motorcycle licence. I rarely ride myself nowadays, but with my husband, we often go touring, and it was great fun to turn up at some events on a motorcycle, in particular those with a motoring or vintage theme. This was another way in which I sought to be accessible to good effect. Although our police commissioner and police and crime commissioner was on the point of ejecting us from a police station car park before we took our helmets off, and he recognised us with a degree of surprise and embarrassment. I chose to celebrate the county of Shropshire with its rich communities and also to champion volunteering in all its forms. I sought out smaller community-based events in addition to larger ones, and I had no idea how intoxicating these themes would prove to be, or the joy of meeting people who never dreamed they would be talking to a High Sheriff, one of the two royal representatives in the county. This is with Shropshire and Newport Canals Trust volunteers. Celebrating the Queen's 90th birthday provided a brilliant opportunity for parties of all sorts, and I want to describe one in a village hall of Bucknell, right on the Herefordshire border. Here was a village community that had come together for a tea party and had decided to invite the High Sheriff. They were astonished and delighted in equal measure when I said yes. I turned up to find a hall full of people of all ages enjoying afternoon tea. And it was here there was an additional theme of my year of office was established, that you can never have too much cake. The villagers did the Queen proud with a feast that was excellent in all respects. Home-baked cakes, pastries and sandwiches to die for. But the icing on the cake, if you will forgive the pun, were the people themselves. A vibrant community, enjoying a day together with all ages, from children to octogenarians. Everyone was involved and contributing. It was lovely to be able to go around and chat with lots of them, and it was here that I first recognised something that I have found to be endemic in Shropshire: the serial volunteer. Individuals do not just help with the village hall. They run a community cafe, run at the church. They are raising money for a memorial. They are first responders in a remote location. They had just raised £800 for the air ambulance. I could go on, but I'm sure you get the picture. That day was a real joy. Next, I would like to describe contact with our fire and rescue service. Shropshire is a big rural county, the largest inland county in England, and providing a fire and rescue service giving good response times is a challenge, and this challenge is largely met through part-time or retained firefighters. We have only 3 fire stations where full-time shift working is employed. Elsewhere, we have 20 stations, all staffed by part-time personnel. For this to work, there is a great reliance on the community and local employers being willing to release staff at a moment's notice for emergency call-outs. I had the privilege of being asked to rededicate the retained station at Bastchurch after refurbishment work. The camaraderie and dedication of the people I met blew me away. They are a tremendous bunch of people who know each other intimately and, more importantly, trust each other in difficult and potentially dangerous situations that they may face. I also visited Headquarters Station in Shrewsbury and another retained station in Ellesmere. At each, I was impressed by the professionalism and dedication of the firefighters I met, including, I'm pleased to report, quite a few women. At the fire service headquarters, they have an unusual desire to cut unsuspecting visitors out of a crashed car. And so I was duly rescued, and in a very professional manner, I may add. As a reward, I was taken up in the Elk to get a view of Shropshire, and it was a lovely view to behold. My knowledge of the military was close to zero. Getting to know the military activity in the county was most enjoyable. We have two centres of excellence with RAF Cosford, the main school of engineering, and RAF Shrewsbury with its military helicopter flying and air traffic control schools. Both station commanders made me very welcome, and I particularly enjoyed a helicopter tour of the county from Shrewsbury, where I was allowed to tell the pilot where I wanted to go. We did not manage the entire county, but not far short. But the real delight were the cadets from all three armed services. I had mistakenly believed that the cadets were simply a means of recruiting. How wrong I was. Although a fair number of cadets progress to a military career, there is no pressure placed upon them to do this, and a majority do not. In fact, the cadets are a brilliant youth organisation, helping to provide life skills for our young people using a military setting. I came across so many stories of our youngsters whose lives had been transformed by joining the cadets. Often, these young people had had difficult lives, and some had been on the brink of criminality. The excellence of cadet leaders, the military discipline operated entirely fairly, and the opportunity to develop skills and friendships and get real qualifications were all factors in the successes that I saw. The cadet leaders deserve special recognition because I found them all to be volunteers. I had always associated the military uniform with paid military service, but again, I was wrong. These people give their time for free, usually 2 nights a week, plus regular weekend exercises, and an annual 2-week summer camp. Tremendous. And this slide is at a celebration for the retiring County Army Cadet Commander. I made a number of visits to the National Memorial Arboretum at Ariwas in next-door Staffordshire. One was on Armed Forces Day to witness the laying down of the guidon, or battle honours of the Shropshire Yeomanry, of the Royal Yeomanry, who have a strong Shropshire connection. Here I am, lining up along with another High Sheriff and military dignitaries to take the salute of the march past on the day. I spent a lot of time trying to get to see and experience volunteers in action across the county. And this often included support services to the elderly, the sick and the disabled. I was touched by what was going on under our noses, but unseen and often unsung. Highlights include a young carer, aged 7 years old, who was responsible for checking his disabled, diabetic, ex-military father's blood sugar levels daily. He did not see it as anything out of the ordinary. I also saw so many volunteers driven by personal experience to help others. Brilliant examples are the Parkinson support groups, the Autism Hub, where those with the condition can meet and associate in an environment free from risk or judgment, and hearing and sight loss voluntary workers. Finally, there were the support groups and provision for the elderly, in particular those with cruel, debilitating dementia. All these and more, me feeling tremendously proud of the voluntary work that goes on within our county. As an example of a vibrant community, in July of my year, I spent a day in Clipbury, Mortimer, visiting gardens that had been opened by ordinary people wanting to help raise funds for St Mary's. It was a lovely sunny summer's day, and it was great to meet people who had worked so hard to make their gardens beautiful. It was a great service of traditional carols with local farmers, handbell ringers, and a primary school choir, followed by excellent mince pies and mulled wine. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend a similar service at Lichfield, so I chose to go on Boxing Day to a service of thanksgiving and reflection. And this proved equally uplifting, but in a very different way. It was also the perfect means to come down to earth after the excesses of Christmas. The cathedral looked a picture and had an impressive host of paper angels hanging around the building. The day was clear, bright and crisp, and the cathedral and close looked stunning. Inside, the stained glass windows sparkled like jewels. I could not tell you about my year without mentioning the Shropshire Federation of Young Farmers Clubs. They are an organisation comprising 18 local clubs with over 900 members. They've recently been awarded the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service for their excellence, self-sufficiency and record of charity fundraising, around £20,000 annually in recent years. Their carol service was at St Lawrence's in Ludlow, and the aim was to get as many Shropshire clubs involved as possible. It worked superbly, with lots of presentations and singing by both soloists and groups. And because it was young farmers, the mince pies and mulled wine were to die for. As I said at the start, it was the people that made the year special. So, over 200 engagements, 8,000 miles, and over 500 handwritten letters of thank you, the year ended. And I feel so privileged and humbled to have been High Sheriff. To finish, I have two thank yous. Thank you to the University of the Third Age for inviting me to speak and to relive a superb year, and thank you for your kind donation. I have chosen the Magistrates Association because it works for justice in England and Wales by engaging with the public, politicians, probation, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service, Crown Prosecution Service, the media, and many other organisations, and the MA is funded by membership subscription and charitable donations. Thank you.
Have any questions at all? I'd like to ask Christine. I think she's covered absolutely everything. Come on, must be something.
Except you covered everything except how did you plan to do all the things that you've done in 1 year and a year to do it in?
Essentially, you need a very good other half who's good at emailing and things like that. That's how we planned. We had a calendar which just had everything on. If it wasn't on the calendar, it wasn't going to be done. And that's how it was done. It took an awful lot of organisation. And I don't have a PA to do it other than my husband who sat over there. So that's how it's done.
Any more questions? Well,
how did you get around the county? Are you driving yourself or do you have a chauffeur?
the question was, how did you get around the county? Did you drive yourself or did you have a chauffeur?
Husband. It was either in the car or on the bike, the motorbike, and that's how we got around the county. I wish I'd had a chauffeur, yeah.
Any more questions?
Do you get to keep the uniform?
Do you get to keep the uniform?
I do. I paid for it. But what good is it going to be?
Don't think it would fit anybody else. Quite tiny, Any more questions? Well, you are obviously very down to earth. You're a people's person. And I was very surprised about how accessible you were to everybody in the county. And I had no idea that it was just right to the High Sheriff and they make them visit a small village hall somewhere. So absolutely worth knowing. I bet you were really relieved that the death penalty had been abolished.